Hello, role-playing people, and in this episode we're taking a look at the Devourer's lore of the wild, their ability to sense through, command, and mutate the local flora. After the fundamentals created physical forms for the spirits awakened by the House of the Firmament, life was ready to bloom. But how? According to which rules? Should it follow the immutable perfect motion of celestial bodies and repetitive patterns created by the House of Spheres, or should it be unpredictable, surprising, impulsive like those of the deeps? This is where the sixth house came in to make sure all of these previously created elements are reflected and balanced within the flora, fauna, and, well, all of the biotic factors that make up various types of ecosystems. With the growth of vegetal and animal life kept in balance by the Lords of Wood and Claw, allowing a wider range of life forms to exist together, there was less need for the intervention of the final house, reserving their services only for aspects of creation that truly had outlived their current purpose and needed to be reborn or remade, shall we say. The labor of the House of Death was considerably less pleasant than that of the other houses, so the less they toiled, the better. As opposed to the second house, which guarded individual spirits and beings, those of the wild guarded families of plants and animals and the bonds between them. If all of these elements can adapt to one another and coexist, at least to some degree, then there's no need to remove them from creation and remake them from scratch. Without further ado, let's have a look at the Evocations. Wilderness sense. The Devourer gains an immediate sense of the surrounding area, building a map in her mind of the region's natural features, the plants and animals that inhabit the place, as well as the location of any interlopers that the local fauna consider a threat. System: role perception plus survival. Demons in the area can attempt to avoid detection through a resisted willpower roll, difficulty 7. If your roll succeeds, your character gets a detailed mental map of her surroundings to which she can refer as needed, along with approximate locations of nearby animals and people. Although this evocation works best in wilderness areas, it can also be used in urban settings at a difficulty of 8. Your Devourer can gain insight into a given area within a radius of miles equal to her faith score. The effects of this evocation last for the duration of the scene. Torment. Monstrous demons who perform this evocation transmit their murderous nature to the surrounding area, causing the flora and fauna to react inimically to human trespassers. Any animals in the area react aggressively to intruders, attacking them if they are able. Athletics or survival rolls must be made for intruders to avoid harm or to escape attack, using the Devourer's Torment score as the difficulty. Fantastic evocation. Simply fantastic. Similar to, but more powerful, I would say, than Koldunism, the Way of Spirit. Being able to sense an entire area, the natural features, all of the plants, animals, and people, including other fallen, without going into a torpor-like trance for an entire scene is a very powerful effect. I love what this power offers, but as expected, it does raise some questions. From the narrative point of view, we're not exactly told how it works. We're only told what it does. And that can make life difficult for storytellers and players alike, especially when it comes to what is essentially a different way of perceiving the world. So does the Devourer obtain information from the spirits of the land, or is it their knowledge of ecosystems that allows them to sense in this manner? If they become one with the flora of the region, gaining whatever senses plants might have, then how are they able to sense hundreds of thousands of mortal inhabitants within an asphalt jungle of concrete boxes so tall that they might block out the sun in an area where vegetation is quite limited? There are urban environments where natural ventilation cannot even keep up with the levels of pollution, urging the mortal inhabitants to rely on tools that allow them control over their climate conditions and the very air they breathe. So I think a very important question here is, how do I narrate what the character is sensing? How does this work? But moving on to the mechanics and rules, well, the number of successes is completely irrelevant, even in urban environments, because one success, which can be obtained automatically by spending one temporary point of faith, is always available. And we're not told that detail of perception or the range of this ability depends on successes rolled. Instead, range is equal to faith. At a starting faith of 3, given that we are talking radius equal to faith score, the character can feel everything surrounding them for 6 miles or 10 kilometers. That's more than the length of my hometown of Brasov, alright? And this is only the default rating that all characters start with. I'm well aware 6 miles is nothing when it comes to larger cities, especially in a US setting, but this is a first dot evocation and it shouldn't have the potential to just reveal the locations of all fallen within a small city, right? So to counter this, having the number of successes rolled determine the area affected is a really good idea from personal experience. You can expect 1-2 successes at a difficulty of 8 within a city landscape, which is enough to cover a neighborhood if you do successes to area covered, but it also urges the characters to move around in order to investigate and expand their range from neighborhood to neighborhood, just like a patrol. And in a wilderness, of course, they're going to have a considerably easier time keeping track of everything on their chosen domain. So why is this good? The Devourer knows exactly or almost exactly where to find any species it might be looking for, whether we're talking about plants with medicinal properties or poisonous plants, whether we're talking about various types of beasts, wild or domestic, whether we're talking about fallen or earthbound. And some storytellers might extend this to detect the undead as well, since Canites have a very distinct energy and, well, non-existent vital signs, which the Flora might pick up on. It might detect lupines in various forms, especially in Krinos form because of the sudden increase in size and weight, or other Fera, of course, because they are not only human, right? And the rage of these spirits might be something that creates a certain type of resonance. But these are entities with very distinct energy signatures, if we can call them that. Can this evocation be used for tracking a particular mortal within a city? No, not really. You can tell how many mortals are there, but to somehow distinguish that particular one, well, that's the purview of the Scourge's lores. Regardless, the evocation is fantastic. It's an awesome narrative tool for both players and storytellers, but I do feel like the area of effect shouldn't be fixed, tied to faith, and well, it shouldn't require only one success to be used at its maximum range and potential. Next dot. Quicken growth. The Devourer can fuel rapid and unchecked growth in local plant life. Trees shoot skyward, vines swell, fissures spread through any object to which they are rooted, and briars envelop their surroundings. System. Roll stamina plus survival. The Devourer focuses on a specific plant and causes it to increase in size by a number of cubic yards equal to the successes you rolled, all within the space of a single turn. Vines or roots inflict a like number of damage points to physical structures with which they are in contact. Consider each success a strength point and compare the result to the feats of strength chart on page 232. Objects caught within the growth radius are swallowed up. The plant remains overgrown and causes damage for a number of turns equal to the successes you rolled. Torment. Monstrous demons cause a plant to grow and entwine any living beings within reach, strangling or ripping them apart. For every living being within the plant's growth area, roll a number of dice equal to your Devourer's willpower. Treat this as a grapple attempt, which victims can attempt to parry or dodge as normal. If the attack is successful, roll a number of damage dice equal to the Devourer's torment. Each success inflicts a level of lethal damage. Probably the best uses of this power can be found in the demon novels in the third book, where a Devourer character, Shadranat, is constantly carrying around bags of sunflower and pumpkin seeds. Everyone else thinks these are just a tasty snack, but during what seems to be a losing battle against an Earthbound's artificial humanoid vessel, created using Lore of Contamination 5, the Devourer's only hope is to jump right into the arms of its attacker, opening up to a grapple, and stick at least one seed into its ear canal. The result is quite spectacular because Shadranat forces the seed to grow using this very evocation, and really all seeds have the potential, the power, to send their roots ripping through the earth, splitting asphalt and concrete alike should it be in their way. Surely you've seen certain types of grasses cracking the roads, shooting skyward, or even trees growing on the roofs of abandoned buildings, because as long as they're getting the nutrients they need to grow, and, well, they're doing photosynthesis, oh, they'll grow. So the battered, injured, grappled Shadranat, who has very little hope of surviving this fight, uses this evocation and cracks this unspeakable servitor's head using seeds. Amazing. It's amazing. It's a really, really awesome scene. So I think the only things this evocation could have used is a clear explanation of whether this damage can be soaked or not, because we're not talking about a strike or a slash. Rather, we're talking about splitting and grappling, of course. Personally, I don't think it can be soaked, but I also don't agree that it keeps causing damage for a number of turns, unless it's a grapple. I mean, the plant only grew this big and dealt this much damage. What's there to keep dealing damage on subsequent turns, especially when it comes to buildings or similar structures, vehicles or whatnot? Speaking of, you can actually use this ability to have grasses grow around or even through the wheels of a vehicle, stopping it from going anywhere as the Flora firmly twists around the axles and holds it in place. Now, in the case of living targets, well, they can certainly just dodge out of the way, but the High Torment version is going to go for them, it's going to grapple them. So this evocation really covers all types of targets. Another reason why I think the low torment damage shouldn't be soaked, at least using mundane means, is the real life bamboo sprout torture or means of execution. I won't go into details, but if you're curious, there are quite a few YouTube videos explaining how this works. And let me tell you, plants can be very scary. Next dot. Command the Wild. The Devourer can direct the rapid growth of local plants by force of will, affecting the environment in specific ways according to the demon's plan. System. Roll intelligence plus survival. Your character can affect a number of plants equal to her faith score. Each of them grows a number of cubic yards equal to the successes you rolled and expands in the direction and configuration specified by your character. If plant growth is directed at a specific structure, take the number of successes rolled and compare them to the feats of strength chart on page 232 of the systems chapter to determine the damage inflicted on objects. Torment. In addition to directing their growth, monstrous demons cause the affected plants to become inimical to flesh and blood, sprouting needle-like thorns and poisonous sap. The exact manifestation is determined by the storyteller, but a successful dexterity plus athletics or survival roll must be made for anyone attempting to move through the area, lest they suffer a number of dice of lethal damage equal to the demon's torment. It's not specified in any way, and it really should be, but I'm hoping changes made to Flora using this evocation are permanent. With the previous evocation, Quicken Growth, I would have really appreciated the option to spend one temporary point of willpower and make a plant larger and, well, mature for more than just a few turns. I mean, malefactors can create permanent unseen paths. They can make permanent changes to items we use on a daily basis, the objects and installations we pretty much depend on. Devils can just command others into doing their bidding. Defilers can permanently alter the aesthetics of your body. Scourges can heal deadly illness, chronic illness. And devourers can't make a tree bear fruit or grow a rose bush in their garden. And that doesn't seem right, because throughout the books they are presented as the architects and masters of fauna and flora, so I think it's only reasonable to assume a devourer can survive comfortably in the wild regardless of season, right? You can command trees and berry bushes into giving you nourishing fruit. You can command store-bought seeds to grow into roots and vegetables that you can eat. Or because the evocation says plants controlled grow in a configuration specified by the character, we can imagine the devourer retreating into the wilderness, whether forest, desert, tundra, whatever, and growing its own living hut, a living bastion out of the local flora, because that is the devourer's kingdom and throne. Also, something left unspecified is whether the change is only related to size or related to the maturity of the plant in question. I mean, I can't do much with an oversized carrot seed, but I can do a lot if I can grow carrots, regardless of season. You see, just as malefactors have a ridiculous amount of control over tech, something humanity depends on completely these days, I would dare say, for production, for transportation, security, communication, and so on, the devourers can control small portions of the food and medicine we need to survive, the very base of human need, and well, even animal need, because if grass suddenly becomes thorny and poisonous on a wide scale without giving fauna the chance to adapt, say goodbye to your fauna, say goodbye to your farms. So I think this lore is about so much more than using a tree to tear down a building. And I do believe starting this level, the changes made to Flora, even though they are still within the bounds of the ecosystem, of course, they should be permanent, in accordance with said Flora's natural life cycle. So you might not have immortal roses or immortal potatoes, but just having some roses and potatoes, at least for a few days, is good enough. Being able to grow yourself a small hut out of twisted, intertwined branches of trees, using living architecture, is really nice, especially if the character wants to maybe relocate their followers and pacts somewhere safe, away from the high crime cities and Earthbound and the other fallen. Next dot. Possess Plant. The demon can take over the living essence of one or more plants, making them extensions of his will. The plant moves with supernatural speed and strength, performing any action the devourer desires. System. Spend 1 faith point and roll stamina plus survival. The devourer can control a number of plants equal to the successes rolled. Plants affected by this evocation must remain rooted in place, but they can perform any other action within the limits of their physical composition and size. A rose bush can entangle a victim, or ivy can pull apart the wall to which it's anchored. The effects of this evocation last for the duration of the scene. Consider the plants to have a strength score equal to your demon's willpower, and refer to the feats of strength chart to determine the damage the plants can do to items. The same number of dice is used to make attack and damage rolls when the plants attack living targets, doing bashing damage. Torment. Monstrous demons spread the taint of their torment through any plants they control, destroying them from within and reducing them to lifeless husks within minutes. Each possessed plant suffers 1 health level of damage per turn that cannot be soaked. As a rule of thumb, assume that a given plant has 1 health level per cubic foot of volume. When all the plant's health levels have been consumed, the plant dies. For some reason, whoever developed these evocations was super fixated on the combat aspect of plants, which is pretty strange if you ask me. This 4th dot evocation lasts for a scene, given its combat applications, the fact that you can control a number of plants equal to successes rolled, and each has a strength rating equal to your protagonist's willpower. I like what this ability does, especially in the wild, where you have plants everywhere. Big plants, trees, maybe vines, maybe cacti, grasses that can grapple your enemy's ankles, thorn bushes that might throw poisonous thorns in an attacker's direction. That's cool. But in order for a devourer to take their throne in such a place and rule it, they still need food and water. Their followers still need food and water. If the only things my plants can do is crack buildings, then my protagonist is still rooted, pun intended, into the urban environment, and thus very far from being a master of the wilds. Vegetation can provide shelter, food, benevolent medicinal substances, pain relief, right? Warmth. You need dry twigs to start a fire. So that is the advantage I'd have liked to see these evocations play into, the ability to command vegetation in a less ephemeral manner. However, this power is still very nice. In a wild environment, you can set up amazing ambushes as the trees suddenly come to life and begin bashing unsuspected trespassers with their branches. That's gotta be a horrifying surprise for anyone caught off guard. Important to notice is that this evocation can only be used on what we can safely call plants. So carrying seeds around isn't going to help for the purpose of using this power unless the character uses the previous evocations first and then this one, though the effect might only last for a couple of turns depending on the evocation used. Next dot. Mutate Plant. The Devourer can manipulate a plant's composition and form at will, creating new specialized breeds according to her desires. System. Spend 1 faith point and roll intelligence plus survival. Your character can alter or add a new plant characteristic per success rolled. Alterations include increased metabolism, heightened speed of growth, thick bark, or tough skin and thorns. These successes can be generated as part of an extended roll over a period of days. As the demon tinkers with her creation, the effects of this evocation persist for a number of days equal to your character's faith score, or they can be made permanent by expending a temporary willpower point. Torment. Monstrous demons who use this evocation create plant life with a taste for blood. Make a willpower roll with the difficulty equal to your character's torment. If the roll fails, the plant's metabolism mutates spontaneously, developing natural weapons that allow it to kill and feed on living beings, including the demon herself. The plant's attack and damage dice pools equal to your character's torment, and the damage is lethal. Yes please. This is the evocation I've been waiting for. The ability to permanently alter flora, creating new breeds. This is fantastic, and certainly you can create gigantic, monstrous, mobile Venus flytraps that go around eating living people. But I'm interested in the less immediately visible, less flashy effects of this power. You can engineer new legumes or crops that are digested differently by the mortal body, giving so much more nourishment. A devourer with this level of mastery can take their followers into the middle of the desert or other inhospitable environments and still find a way to provide, or in this case, grow, shelter and nourishment, which is fantastic. You can craft unfathomably potent and potentially undetectable poisons, undetectable by current medical means. Or you can ramp up the healing properties of medicinal plants, or engineer a plant that might eat plastics, turning them into something else. Or a plant that collects and purifies the water it grows in. The pollen of these plants might trigger severe allergies or have soporific effects. So the options are endless. The downside is, after what might be days of tinkering, you get only one plant, which then needs to be bred, or if the effects of the third evocation are indeed permanent, you can enhance the growth and multiply your creation using Command the Wild, if not Quicken Growth. I will stick to my guns here and say, yeah, it doesn't make sense that you need a 5th dot evocation just to grow a bouquet of roses, which actually brings out another point. The Devourer can easily use these powers to make pacts. I know throughout the books, Devourers are presented as impatient, lacking in diplomacy, tact, or the ability to keep up prolonged deception. And for these reasons, they don't really make pacts. They reap faith instead. Still, I cannot help but feel like if there is a branch, pun intended, yet again, of their members that would be more patient and subtle, it would be those of the wild. Let's have a look at their apocalyptic form next. Ninurtu, the Visage of the Wild. The angels of the wilderness manifest as an amalgam of the flora they command and the fauna that thrive beneath their aegis. Their skin is commonly covered by a fine pelt, similar to a deer's, and they often possess hooves instead of feet. Their bodies are powerfully muscled and their eyes can change colors like the seasons, ranging from pale gray to deep summer green. The Visage of the Wild confers the following special capabilities. Enhanced senses. The character's 5 senses are heightened to superhuman levels, lowering the difficulties of perception rolls by 2. Chameleon skin. The demon's skin allows it to blend with its surroundings. The difficulties of all stealth rolls decrease by 1 if the demon is on the move, and 2 if it's standing still. Pass without trace. The difficulties of the character's stealth rolls decrease by 2, and her passage does not disturb the surrounding environment in any way. She leaves no footprints and disturbs no foliage. Extra health levels. The character's vitality provides 3 extra bruised health levels for the purposes of absorbing damage. Torment. Monstrous Ninurtu are darker of hue and their eyes take on the color of the silver moon. They swell in size and their appearance exudes the kind of forbidding menace of the deep forests and the high mountains. The Visage of the Wild confers the following high torment special capabilities. Thorns. The demon's shoulders, chest, and arms are covered with needle-sharp black thorns that inflict 1 level of aggravated damage to any attacker who successfully strikes or grapples the demon in unarmed combat. Increased size. The character's body grows to 1/3 again its own height, adding the following bonus traits: +1 strength, +2 dexterity, +1 stamina. Extra limbs. The demon grows a prehensile tail. A prehensile tail is half your character's height, uses only half his strength rounded down to lift objects, and allows him to hang suspended. Venom. The demon's saliva contains an intoxicating form of venom that affects a victim's will. If a victim is exposed to the demon's saliva through an open wound or a kiss, she loses 1 willpower point per point of the demon's torment unless a successful stamina roll is made, difficulty 7. If the victim loses all of her willpower points in this fashion, she falls into a death-like coma. The effects of the venom last for a number of days equal to the character's torment. See? Just as I thought. The apocalyptic form enhances their senses to better keep track of all the living things within their domain, but also invites discretion, stealth, because of chameleon skin and pass without trace, which, used together, lower the difficulties of stealth rolls by 4 if the Devourer is standing still. That is insane. That's a difficulty of 2 to stay hidden as you animate and manipulate nearby flora to trap, distract, or even kill your enemies. The extra health levels make these fallen tougher than most, should they fight openly for whatever reason, and all of the ambush predator stealth goodness is made even better since they possess high torment forms like thorns, extra limbs, and venom, along with increased size. If you don't have a devil or a scourge on your team for their supernatural means of detection, stay away from the domain of an Inurtu Devourer. You will not even see them coming, and by the time you do, there is very little hope of making it out alive. So while they might be tactless and impulsive in social interactions with the other fallen, I can definitely see those of the wild as the most subtle, patient, and calculated devourers. So there we have it, the lore of the wild, the ability to sense, grow, command, enhance, and permanently mutate local vegetation according to the demon's plans and desires. Overall, it's a fantastic lore that allows so much narrative potential and creative uses, and I like how the writers encourage certain effects to be discussed or negotiated with the storyteller. That's a very good approach when the rules themselves are ambiguous and they need to allow for a wide range of uses. However, I do believe the first evocation should have had at least some effects, some of its parameters, tied to the number of successes, and the second one should have had the option to make the plant growth permanent, because it wouldn't have gone against the natural life cycle of said plant. Oh no, it would have still dried up and died when its time came, according to season or weather or lack of nutrients, but it could have sped up the process of reaching maturity, besides breaking buildings and grappling things. And in some instances, the non-combat application can be much more useful. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, have fun, and don't forget to play.